Hello, welcome to our video for May. Still writing the middle because it's long. It's the biggest part of your book, and it's important. You have to have a logical way to get from your beginning to your end, or else your readers aren't going to really like that so much. So, just going back to your outline, being willing to be flexible with it. If you come up with better ideas, go with your better ideas. And so I just wanted to remind you about some of the things we talked about last month, because I gave a lot of the advice that I would give anybody writing the middle of a novel. That's first is the try-fail cycles, making sure that you have a reasonable number of times that your protagonist or protagonists try to solve their problem and fail. So in this case, there has to be a problem. Remember that. They have to want something that they can't have. There's some sort of obstacle preventing them from getting what it is they need or want. And they have to try in escalating fashion to solve that problem, get what they want. So the first try is the first thing that comes to mind. The simple solution that tries to wrap it up quickly doesn't work. Try something a little bit more intense. That also doesn't work. And you can keep doing this until you get to the final attempt, the great big one that if they fail, this is it. This is for all the chips. Everything, we're all in, full on. And then at that point is when they can finally resolve that. And you have to just decide, hey, what kind of victory is it going to be, though? Because a lot of times victory in real life is not all that cut and dry. There is a price to pay for victory, whether it's a bittersweet ending a lot of times. So it's up to you. Kind of depends on the tone that you're going for, and just making sure that it makes sense with the rest of your story, with the way it began and the way it continues. Also, just making sure you don't get bogged down on too many side tangents. So unless you're really writing this great big epic novel that's got all these different plot threads or anything, it's okay to have multiple plot threads. That's totally fine. If you want to follow your protagonist and you want to follow the villain, great. If that makes sense for your story, if it adds to the story, that the two or three or whatever plot threads are going to enhance each other. If that doesn't happen, then it doesn't need to be there. Everything should be either telling you about the plot, how that's going to go forward, advancing the plot in some way, or be in there because it adds to our understanding of the characters, or both. Or in some cases that it's also building the world, and we'll say that, the world building. But if you write something and it doesn't conform to one of those three, at least, or multiple of them, then you can probably leave it out. There's a phrase in the writing industry where it's called "killing your darlings." It's a horrible phrase, but the sentiment behind it is that even if you really, really like something and it's really fun and you have to have it in there, if it doesn't pass one of those tests, it still shouldn't be in there. So even if you really like it as a writer, if it doesn't advance the plot or the characterization or the world building, cut it. It's hard to do. And I've had to do that myself. Then you realize that the story is stronger for it, because you don't want to have any excess stuff. You don't want fluff. You don't want things that are bogging down the flow of your story. I mean, I'm sure you've sat through movies where you're like, why is this even in here? Let's get to the action. There's just people sitting around talking and doing nothing. And not in an interesting way, or a way that tells us something vital about the character that we need to know. So just making sure in this middle is cutting out the fluff. And that's something that you can also do in the editing process. But if writing less fluff to begin with, you'll have less to do during your editing process. So make sure that the flow of your story is going well. And also remember your stakes. There has to be, the protagonist or protagonists need to have something that they could possibly lose. So what happens if they don't succeed? Those are the stakes. And the stakes can get greater over time. They can deepen, which is, we talked about that last time, where they get more and more severe for a single person, or group, or they can broaden where they get more and more people involved in these stakes. So it goes from, oh, the supervillain is going to destroy the town to the supervillain is going to destroy the world and it affects everyone, or whatever. But you see what I mean? You need to deepen and broaden your stakes as time goes on so that the reader becomes more and more invested in what's going on in your book. All right. Best of luck. The middle could be totally hard, and you can totally get bogged down. This is where motivation often lags as well. You can really get stuck, and if you're not careful and you're not consistent in writing, it's super easy just to say, I'll get to that later. And sometimes later ends up being years later. Been there. So get through it. You can always go back and revise, but just keep it moving forward. Keep yourself excited by making smaller goals to reach and say, hey, look at this progress I'm making. I'm doing great. And talk to your writing buddies, whatever. Have them keep egging you on. Say, hey, you can do this. Keep going. How much did you write? What's new on your story? That sort of thing. All right. Best of luck and happy writing.